Hi, welcome to this webinar, City Zenith and the Real World Metaverse. I'm Steve Loader, and I'm just going to set the scene for you here. The Metaverse market size stood at nearly $64 billion last year, according to a report by Fortune Business Insights. And this year, it could easily clear 100 billion. And it's then going to go really big by the end of the decade. It'll be worth at least $1,527 billion by 2029, or more than 1.5 trillion, and working out at a CAGR of 47.6%. Just to put some perspective on that, the global telecommunications industry was worth $1.74 trillion last year, and the auto industry was worth 3 trillion. And how long did it take them to get where they are today? As advertised, we have two guests today, well qualified to speak about why and how this Metaverse Big Bang will happen. Michael Janssen, CEO and founder of the pioneering digital twin company Cityzenith. An impassioned architect, urbanist, and entrepreneur, Michael has created and led high-growth companies in the US and Asia for more than 2 decades. Since founding Cityzenith and driving development of its groundbreaking digital twin platform, Smart World OS, Michael has been on a personal mission to revolutionize use of mass data to transform the global built environment. He has been featured by CNN, CNBC, the BBC, plus other media around the world, and received many awards for his work. Our other guest is John de Jong, who is a director and senior analyst at Ernst & Young's Research Institute, a think tank which addresses the question, what's after, what's next? He brings more than 20 years' experience in developing business insights focused on innovation capital, entrepreneurship, clean tech, and sustainability. He is the author of EY's Global CEO Imperative Study and one of the contributors to EY's Megatrends report on the forces transforming business and society. John recently published an article on Metaverse sustainability, part of a series on the Metaverse sponsored by EY's Global Technology Officer, and he will be sharing those perspectives today. We will, of course, be taking questions from the floor, so feel free to pitch in via the chat. Okay, before we press on, if you arrived a little late or missed the ending, this webinar will be available in full on the City Zenith YouTube channel in the next few days. And you'll also be sent a webinar replay via email. So I now welcome Michael and John, who will each give us a presentation on this fascinating topic. Over to you first, Michael.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate it. And thank you to everybody for taking the time to be a part of this presentation. You know, and thank you especially to you, John, for showing up for this with your fantastic work at E&Y on the work around the metaverse and what that is, especially as it pertains to decarbonization and the absolutely brilliant article that you wrote recently that was seen all over the world. It's obviously an interesting subject. We had over 620, I think, people registered for today. So, thank you to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this. What I'm going to do is walk you through what Cityzenith does and kind of finish that with a discussion around its relevance to the metaverse and a version of the metaverse that is actually being created and enacted in the real world today. There are all kinds of discussions today about what the metaverse even is, and what the domain should be, etc. What we're going to discover is that there are multiple metaverses out there, and many more to come that will have specializations, if you will, in areas that include, for example, retail experiences, healthcare, social interaction, and even the type of work that we do in collaborating to solve complex problems like decarbonization. So, a bit on us at Cityzenith. As I mentioned, we're focusing on something that's been called urban digital twins, and digital twins are virtual replicas of real things. In the case of the built environment, they are virtual replicas of buildings, infrastructure, and networks in the cities that are connected to all of the data in and around them, and they're used to optimize all aspects of design and planning, construction, and ultimately the ongoing operations and management of these assets at scale, including today a specific emphasis on helping those assets to decarbonize. I'm going to give you a little peek here at something that we did recently in Las Vegas by showing you a video. And this to just give you a little bit of a peek into what that looks like today, this kind of metaverse for cities, if you will.
%39% of global carbon emissions come from the buildings in our cities. Less than 2% of America's 6 million office buildings are green. But what if we could help buildings, infrastructure and cities reach net zero faster, without risk and at a fraction of the cost? At City Zenith, that's what we do. Our Smart World platform leverages cutting-edge AI to automate the complex decarbonisation process. Powerful visualization tools help clients analyze and predict performance in real time, simplifying financial and operational decision-making. Thanks to our partnership with the City of Las Vegas and leading IoT provider Turbine, our Las Vegas digital twin features an unprecedented level of real-time sustainability data. Outside buildings, sensors monitor complex metrics, feeding data continuously into Smart World, including information about traffic density and air quality, helping planners, developers, and city officials make Las Vegas a more efficient, sustainable, and enjoyable city. Inside buildings, Smart World OS allows users to optimize their operational and energy systems, ensuring occupants enjoy a high-quality environment. City Zenith's new Smart World OS Net Zero module continuously monitors clients' energy consumption, tenant behavior, and renewables performance, making it simple to purchase high-quality, verified carbon offsets to ensure properties maintain net zero compliance, providing the only true end-to-end net zero solution for building owners today. City Zenith, we pledge to make the built environment a cleaner, safer, more efficient place for all. Join us.
Thank you for that. Let me go back to the presentation. And yeah, what you saw there really was a metaverse, a digital metaverse of the city of Las Vegas with data from hundreds of data sets connected to a dynamic model of the city, specifically focusing on data in and around the decarbonization issue, helping us to identify decarbonization opportunities in Las Vegas at a geospatial level, and then be able to go inside the building, connect to building systems with specific applications, and help those owners to achieve those outcomes. So, very powerful tool. Urban digital twins generally are help to reduce operating costs by 35% or more, help boost productivity, and significantly cut emissions. I think Forbes, who said over the next 5 years or 4 years, 500 major world cities will rely on digital twins for daily operations and generating about $280 billion in city planning development and operating savings, which is helping to drive the digital twin market from $3 billion last year to $48 billion as it's projected over the next few years. Within this context of this emerging metaverse of digital twins, we've discovered that there are certain drivers that drive the adoption of a digital twin metaverse like this at a city scale. And certainly the need to decarbonize buildings is become exceptionally mission critical to missions of cities around the world, with 1,000 cities now, I think, as of last year, having, or last, this December, having made mandates to limit all emissions by 2050. It's 1,000 cities. The world only has about 10,000 cities, and the 1,000 that committed are most of the big ones. So the inconvenient truth is that in cities, buildings are the biggest polluters. They are 50 to 70% in small cities, 70 to 95% in large cities, 30% of total emissions, and 75% of all buildings actually need to be retrofitted in the United States alone in order to achieve this country's net zero goals. Yet we only have, of our 6 million office buildings in this country, 1.7% of them are actually green. So we're really way off of those targets, and fewer than 0.01% actually are truly net zero. So with numbers like that, we have a long way to go. How do you get to net zero? How do you actually reduce these emissions? It's a process. It is a process that involves a series of simultaneous actions that result in what's called a net zero building. So those involve a few major steps. First is to deploy a monitoring system, a building management system or an energy monitoring system that helps you optimize the use of energy in that building. That will save you 15 to 25% right off the bat. And then deploying on-site renewable energies to the maximum extent that you can. Of course, that depends on the location of that building, its type, size, age, purpose, on multiple things. And there are also multiple strategies that can be deployed. And then the residual dependence that asset has on oil and gas can be offset by purchasing carbon rewards or credits or offsets from a variety of sources, both locally and internationally. All of that then needs to be continuously monitored because often the implementation of equipment, these are projects that can take months. And in the entire process of getting to net zero, it can take several months to 2 years. So the need for a tool to be able to monitor that and live alongside all of these assets in real time and be connected to all of that data in real time is absolutely essential. Lots of new market drivers driving the adoption of digital twins in this space. For the first time in American history, cities around the country are requiring their building owners to eliminate emissions. That was New York, already Washington, D.C., the city of Boston recently, the entire state of Maryland, I believe the week before last. 9 cities and states right now, and this trend is just not going to stop. That is helping to create a $200 billion market for green building retrofits in the United States alone. The reason that this hasn't all moved faster historically, despite being an obviously good thing to do, is that building retrofits are traditionally expensive. They're $2 to $7 per foot, more like 4 to 7. And when you consider the fact that building owners spend about $2.10 per square foot on energy annually, it's a large number. And as such, the payback periods on typical retrofits can be 10 to 15 years. And in the real estate pyramid, those at the top of the investment pyramid typically look for returns within 3 to 5 years, ideally 3. And as a result, a lot of these investments just don't happen. We have to actually triple to quadruple the amount of investing in these types of green building retrofits and related activities just over the next few years to catch up to the Paris goals that we've set out. So, there are a lot of challenges here in making green buildings. One of the simple and most overlooked and most basic is the use of data to study, simulate, and analyze how all this will happen before spending $1. And that's what digital twins can do. Software is everywhere. And there is no platform that is actually out there syncing the myriads of tools, literally thousands, being used for a variety of purposes in energy management, in risk mitigation, etc. And as a result of the kind of chaos of tools out there, owners are hesitant to make commitments to invest in the substantial capital outlay necessary to decarbonize buildings. Well, the purpose of building a kind of metaverse around all of this, we call this smart world, was to allow all of this activity necessary to these processes needed to decarbonize to happen in one common place. So all of that activity, from the construction to the financing to the design of these retrofit projects, could be studied using detail and simulated before anybody actually spends $1, and then completely optimized. So urban digital twins make the perfect metaverse for this. They aggregate and simulate and manage complex data for complex solutions for all kinds of projects, not only cities, but you'll find them used in the oil and gas sector, and in the military sector and elsewhere. In this case, we're using them to predict energy consumption and financial outcomes, as I mentioned, at scale, which will help drive down capital risk and increase adoption. by using the unique power of digital twins to study multiple systems in parallel. We call this systems of systems tools. We can see how the implementation of a BMS or an EMS combined with a solar system, combined with a geothermal system, combined with a financing structure can be optimized for the client. And this stands to save our clients millions of dollars a year. In addition to that, they can be used to monitor. So one of the problems with energy performance monitoring is keeping up performance. And these systems can be used to analyze changes in behavior, that is building behavior in real time, and make adjustments to ensure compliance and consistent monitoring. So we see these types of metaverses of digital twins now being spread out among property owners, facility managers, infrastructure operators, energy firms doing energy transition, especially in cities, entire firms of architects, engineers, and planners, and whole governments. The projects that we see, of course, cities, and their very important subcomponents like airports, seaports, large infrastructure projects. These are all like mini metaverses now of information provided by consultants and contractors and local authorities, even citizens that come together to make these projects more efficient and more sustainable. So in this effort, we have pulled some partners in. Smart World is now kind of out there. It's being deployed in cities around the United States and soon the rest of the world. For its kind, it is one of the most advanced urban digital twin platforms and probably the only true emerging urban metaverse in the world today. It is very flexible and scalable. It runs pan life cycle, which most of these don't. We have a community of application developers making amazing things emerging around this, and we got some great partners. We recently joined the World Economic Forum's Net Zero Carbon Cities initiative to study how we can deploy this technology at scale with their support and the support of their network around the world. So from a business perspective, we do large-scale projects. Yes, we're doing a big fancy race car project right now. We're doing a couple of big city things in Phoenix and in Los Angeles. There's a very large downtown commercial core, we'll call it urban core project happening in the southeast of the country that we hope to start soon. We've formed partnerships now with important companies like Amazon and others to help distribute us. And we're making this module for the kind of mid-range building owner, about 100,000 feet or less, that will help them also get access to a version of this technology for something which is affordable and easy to scale. That allows us to, for an investment of 10 cents per square foot from our customers, to unlock for them $3 to $5 per square foot in savings by the completion of these projects, which at a maximum are 3 to 5 years and typically under 3. And consider the fact that the American office building market alone is 100 billion square feet, and that 98.3% of it is still to be decarbonized. It's a massive opportunity. So this initiative that we created, and I'm getting close to wrapping all of this up, but I wanted to mention before closing some of the projects and also some of the media around this. We had about 1,000 international media mentions about the Clean Cities, Clean Future campaign that we launched the year before. And now it's actually on national television. We're in the middle of running a nationwide television campaign. I think something like 40 million Americans are going to see this by the end of this upcoming weekend. Let me share, if you haven't seen it on TV yet, if you're watching CNBC, Fox Business, MSNBC, DirecTV, all this, you'll be able to see it. I'm going to give you a little peek at the ad that we're running right now, which is really just calling attention to why we're all doing this in the first place.
In just a few decades, 68% of us will be living in cities. But did you know that cities account for 3/4 of all global CO2 emissions, and population growth and poor planning is making the problem worse? With our transformational AI software platform, we pledge to try and make the world's most polluted cities more sustainable, clean, and efficient, because we want to build a better future for our children, and we want you to join us.
Thank you for that. So you got a glimpse of what that was, the Clean Cities, Clean Future campaign. We're now doing this in various cities where we're deploying this technology, working with local green building authorities, and creating a kind of mini metaverse in an area of the city where building owners can get access to all the data and tools they need to understand how to decarbonize their properties. You saw a bit about what was happening in Las Vegas there with the Circuit Casino in the heart of all of that. In the Phoenix project, that building will be announced fairly soon, but it's a major downtown, another major downtown building on the same mission. We're very happy in this project to be collaborating with Amazon, which is a wonderful partner to have, and more announcements will be made soon about that relationship sometime later on this year, but it's a major partner for us. Our vision for this, actually, and people have been asking is, how far does this go? It's really about decarbonizing the buildings in our cities. So we've got 4 cities. I think by next year or so we'll have a total of about 10. And as we keep pushing forward, and that'll be say 50 to 100 buildings, and then within a few years, let's get to 100 cities and thousands of buildings, and then after that, by 2026, 27, 300 cities, and over 10,000 buildings. I think this is very achievable. And if we do that, and we're making a major dent, we're actually deploying a metaverse at scale in the centers of the world where there is the most intense decarbonization needed, which is our major urban centers. So we're kind of going right into the heart of the urban centers, right into the marrow of the problem, which is building decarbonization, a very murky problem because there's so much legacy technology in building after building. Every building in the world was custom made. It's not like cell phones, right, or cars. So having a flexible system that can integrate with the myriads of tools and architecture that exists in these buildings, that was genius building that. We started off with the Cto of Google Earth himself, the French engineer Rémi Arnaud, who came out of Google and joined us to build version 1. And our Cto today, Fasanta Bose, was the head of data science at Starbucks and oversaw the use of data to optimize the entire fleet of Starbucks stores. He was the head of digital twin and Cto at Acuity Brands, a major energy equipment distributor, and also a principal researcher at Lockheed Martin. Again, all dealing in these issues of the complex systems of systems environments. And we need that, the ability to take, to have a real metaverse. We need to be able to have, real data and be able to solve real problems with real applications. And that's where you'll see the Cityzenith Smart World Metaverse different from a lot of the other things that we see out there. Ours is like a sim city, but for real cities. The metaverse is forecast by Bloomberg to be an $800 billion market in the next evolution of the internet, which is a major statement. That's to say that we're not going to be just interfacing with the internet through websites anymore, but yet through this experiential environment, right? I think it's going to be as big a shift for some people as it was, having a cell phone in the first place. So if you're, something to think about. And I think the companies that make that easier are going to be more successful. The technologies that make up this metaverse include virtual reality, augmented reality, 3D, BIM, all that type of fun stuff. It translates into a variety of things, including a digital economy where users can create, buy, and sell stuff. And in the more idealistic visions of the metaverse, it's interoperable, meaning users can take virtual items like clothes or cars from one platform to another. Let's just talk about what does all that become. Are these all interconnected? But the things that we see, and we'll talk more about this after John speaks, and he and I have a chat, and then we take questions from the audience. But a lot of applications emerging in the realm of e-commerce, gaming, decarbonization, sustainability, climate change, that's us. New modes of working in offices. I believe that's going to be very interesting. During the pandemic, some companies popped up offering much more engaging ways of interacting with your peers than Zoom, for example, or cell phones, and of course, social media. So I've spoken a bit about why I think that this is the right answer for, that is, urban digital twins are kind of the beginning of this the building of a first real world metaverse. And you're going to see that happening. You're going to see, as we get more and more cities have these, you're going to have kind of these master metaverses, if you will, in cities that like many digital twins will plug into. There'll be a master twin, there'll be networks of twins that will be at the building and infrastructure level, even twins of things inside buildings and underground. They'll all connect into ultimately what we call a master twin, kind of master metaverse for each city. And that's out a bit, by the way. I think that the my take on that is it's digital twins first, metaverse next. It's 5 to 10 years, but it's definitely going to happen, and it's going to be interesting to see all how different companies and all kinds of folks respond to this as the metaverse continues to mature and get more and more interesting. And I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to hand it over to John. So John, take it away.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks so much for the kind introduction, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you and your community here. And as Michael mentioned, I recently published an article for EY on the sustainability dimensions of the metaverse, and this is part of a series that's being sponsored by our global chief technology officer. And Michael was kind enough to offer his insights and enrich the article related to digital twins. So I'm going to share some of those perspectives, so sort of broadening the lens to the metaverse sustainability overall, after Michael's sort of deep dive on digital twins and introduction into what the metaverse is. So let me just start my slide here.
Is that not coming up for you?
Yeah, it's not coming up for me. I'm getting the kind of the circle.
Yeah, me too.
Settings.
Let me try this again. Okay.
Start presentation.
In case that something happens here, do you have a backup? There's an option to share your screen at the top instead.
Sure. Okay, let me just do that real fast.
Fortunately, it's one slide, John.
Yeah. Okay, coming to it.
I'll hang in there with you until I make sure.
Yeah. Are we seeing this?
We are.
Excellent. Great. So one of the questions, the questions that we're addressing in our series on the metaverse are things like, how will the metaverse transform the enterprise? What kind of regulation is needed? How will it reframe human experiences, especially in related to consumers and businesses? And then, given the sort of fractured, balkanized world and internet that's developing, how will the metaverse sort of manifest itself in different geographies? But here we're really looking at how could creating this virtual world build a more sustainable one. And if you, the premise that we begin with, and we really look at sort of mainly the E in ESG, the environment, but there are also social and governance considerations as well when you think about sustainability. So if we have a persistent, synchronous live world with no user limit, and you have commerce and creation in it, you need a lot of cloud-based data, a lot of compute power to render those 3D voxels and interactions, and the AI behind it all. And so that's going to require a lot of energy. And I think going into this, I expected that data centers would be a real source of additional power consumption. But as I dug into it, I found something that to me was surprising, and maybe it's not surprising to you folks in IT, but over the last decade, internet traffic has increased 17x. Data center workloads have increased 9x, but the data center power consumption has only increased 1.1x. So essentially flat over the last decade, mainly due to this to the shift into hyperscale data centers that are custom built by the big tech players, and realize high levels of efficiency. And the tech companies also are big consumers of renewable energy. There are some things that are likely to challenge this going forward. So one is that as we shift to metaverse experiences, it requires very low latency. So having centralized data processing may not work as well. We may have to have local data centers to deliver those experiences much more quickly, which could reduce some of those efficiencies. And then there are some, data privacy and localization requirements that are emerging that may, again, push for more decentralized data centers. But I think the good news is that the trend so far is that data center efficiency has been decoupled really from workloads. Where things get interesting is really in the substitution effects. So you have, UI recently did a consumer survey, and 21% of consumers say that they're planning to buy fewer physical goods in the future in favor of digital ones. And so if you think about that a little bit, the embedded carbon, the embedded resources in all those in a variety of consumer products, even if you reduce them by a small amount, you could really realize some sustainability benefits. And so, one of the things we looked at was the global denim trade, and which has a lot of embedded carbon, a lot of embedded water in it. So if you reduce that by 10%, you could essentially take 350,000 US cars off the road and reduce water consumption by the equivalent of 400,000 Chinese individual water consumers. And Michael touched on meetings. Travel before the pandemic was 2.5% of global emissions, which obviously cratered during the pandemic, and then Zoom and its counterparts emerged as kind of good enough. But when you look at the capabilities of what the metaverse is offering in terms of interactions, being able to look at models and manipulate things, you could have conceivably meetings that are better virtually than you could have in person. And so I think a lot of the discretionary trips are likely to go away. And also in the consumer realm, 21% of online sales were returned in 2021. So if you could reduce that by allowing people to try things on virtually, instead of ordering it, looking at it, and returning it, there'd also be substantial benefits. Yet, there could also be, the metaverse could generate a whole new class of consumer products, which could, if there are a billion VR headsets, manufactured and sold, and haptic devices and that kind of thing, that could have sustainability impacts as well. The transactions that are growing up around the metaverse are problematic, of course. So a lot of it is crypto-based, and only 25% of crypto transactions currently are powered by renewables. One NFT transaction is the equivalent to burning 18 liters of diesel. So there's got to be, if that is becoming the embedded standard of the metaverse, certainly that has to change. Shift to proof of stake rather than proof of work could help, but clearly, renewables need to be part of the answer as well. Michael talked a lot about the building digital twins, but digital twins more broadly are going to offer huge benefits. So, and these are digital twins from the global scale down to the individual human scale. So the European Space Agency is building a digital twin of the Earth to model different climate zones, and initially sort of whether the Arctic or forests, and then ultimately trying to put that together, which is going to give great new abilities to understand how our climate works and what kind of interventions we can do to help moderate climate change. They're in manufacturing. For a long time, digital twins have been employed, but when you add on things like generative design and additive manufacturing, the opportunities for efficiency, for increasing uptime, for reducing waste, increases substantially. And then in individuals, we're starting to see individual digital twins being created, where you take a variety of data sources, from wearable sensors to air pollution levels, and combining that with the patient data to drive to sort of forecasts of future health, and to enable better care and outcomes. But one thing that really intrigued me as I got into this was the opportunity to drive different individual behaviors related to climate change through immersive experiences. So I talked to a professor at the University of Oregon who did work with Jeremy Bailenson at Stanford, and his research showed or pointed to how immersive experiences can overcome our innate human behavioral biases. As a species, we overweight short-term risks and rewards, and we're very bad at acting on long-term risks and rewards, which is sort of terrible when you think about climate change. But also, our perception of climate change essentially resets every year. So any climate or weather memory that we have essentially resets after 8 years and becomes normal. So we lose that urgency of climate change. But the presence and immersion and embodiment that you can experience in virtual reality shifts or overcomes that by creating empathy, and creating that real first person experience. And we can get into some of those experiments in the discussion, but it's an interesting sort of behavioral dimension of it. And so when you look in balance, I think the metaverse offers substantial opportunities to drive sustainability from an environmental perspective. But as we build the metaverse or metaverses, I think we have to make sure that we don't forget the S and the social dimensions of it. So how can we ensure that the virtual worlds that are coalescing in the metaverse don't simply import the unsustainable social dimensions of the current world? So we need to address, the issues of accessibility, diversity, inclusion, and equity before they become ingrained as a result of exponential growth. How can the benefits of the metaverse be widely shared? For example, the pandemic exposed how many households don't even have Wi-Fi, for remote education, let alone VR gear. And so I think the message that I would bring and bring to this is that we all have agency in how the metaverse develops. It's not going to happen by itself. And so as business leaders, as business participants, we need to lead in this and create the metaverse that we want to see, and not just let it happen. So with that, let me stop sharing and we can have some dialogue.
Hi, I'm back. That was really good and very involving. We've got quite a lot of questions that have arisen as well. It looks like we've got a very engaged audience here. One of the themes that's running, which you touched upon there, John, was a circular economy. How can we? This is from Ian Foster. How can we create a circular economy between built environment and the rainforests? And where can digital assets, carbon offsets, and Cityzenith'S digital twin platform make this a reality for cities, building owners, governments, and people alike? And interestingly, we've also had a question which touches upon the same thing, where referring to your recent discussions with Amazon, Michael, to create that kind of circular deal as well. So I don't know if is that something you can take us forward with.
How do you mean? Like, can you just give me a specific?
Could
you just re-ask the question, please?
Yeah, I mean, the original question from Ian Foster was, how can we create a circular economy between the built environment and the rainforests? And where can digital assets, carbon offsets, and the Cityzenith'S digital twin platform make this a reality for cities, building owners, governments, and people alike?
Right.
We'll leave it at that for a minute and see where we spin off from there.
Right. So in the decarbonization space, a platform like SmartWorld has two elements. There's a geospatial element, which handles data at scale, and then it has the building level element. We call that building and asset level of digital twinning. So for the decarbonization piece, being able to identify optimal qualified carbon credit sources, whether those are from a neighboring city or state or halfway around the world, can be used in such an expanded metaverse. In theory, if everything were participating, not only would every building be a part of the metaverse, so would every forest. And right now there is plenty of companies already doing things like using GPS technology to manage forests. The government of Brazil is now looking at a program that will allow it to basically rent the Brazilian rainforest by the square meter, converting it into carbon offsets, basically a carbon offset generator. And we're learning all kinds of things about there's certain types of forests sequester gases more than others. So there's certain types of trees are being planted more now because they have higher value to the carbon offset space. So all of this can be brought together in a common geospatial platform.
Yeah, agreed. So I would just add that satellite data is being used to manage forests, to validate their persistence of the credits, the quality of the credits, and so as Michael suggests, we could link that together to develop more high quality, more verifiable, nature-based carbon solutions that are linked to the buildings and the building operation through credits.
Okay. I had a question early on while you guys were presenting about whether San Francisco is still in the mix for Clean Cities, Clean Future. I just wanted to expand on that because I wonder whether there's an element of a sort of watch, wait and see where you've got a number of cities that are already working with you, Michael, but a lot of them are holding back. Do you get the impression that eventually we're going to have a dam breaking and this is really going to go very, very quickly? I mean, you recently said that if we targeted the big city polluters, we could even bring net zero back by 15 years or cut it down by 15 years. So from 2050 down to 2035.
Right. Well, it's not the cities, to be honest. It's us. You know, we got overwhelmed by these projects that we were doing, and we got involved in New York and then in Las Vegas. And you have big partners and big projects, you know, with big building owners in each of these things. And we're 30 some odd people, you know. So we had to unfortunately tell a number of cities that they would have to wait until later in the year. And my goal is right now to, you know, is to continue this. It's not really a game of how many cities we can sign up. It's more, we're using these opportunities to bring Smart World to a different level and be able to take it to hundreds of cities in 2023 and beyond. So this year, we're doing a lot of strategic partnership work. Working with major partners like Amazon. You know, there's a major, I should announce that one of the world's largest energy companies is now working with Cityzenith on a major POC for decarbonizing an entire city using our digital twin metaverse technology. So I see a question from Nicholas here. Yeah, Nicholas, all of our projects are, you know, unfortunately dealing with, you know, gigabytes of highly confidential performance data. We don't make a lot of things public, but Smart World OS today is deployed and highly capable, and it is scaling from city to city, largely working with the energy sector. The reason you don't see it is that we're not working with the retail sector. We don't have an application for the home. We don't have an application for the homeowner. We're thinking about that. We're thinking about that. I think could be a possibility at some point we do a mobile app, kind of a simplified metaverse tool for homeowners that will help them to be able to do that. But the fact is that our metaverses are extremely private. They are like an embassy of data, you know. So, and unfortunately, Nicholas, you know, we have to talk about, you know, digital twins, as you know very well, with most of the products out there calling themselves digital twin products, as you know very well, Nicholas, are complete fakes. They're basically BIM tools or 3D GIS tools that are 50 years old, or you know, basically visualization tools that with some data tagged on them, you know, like some things we've seen. And the truth, in a real metaverse, actually needs an underlying data graph. It needs an underlying logic framework that can then overlay and allow for the immense metaverse of analytics to actually take place. So all these poofy models that you see that look pretty, these aren't metaverses, Nick. You know, these aren't, you know, we'll see them as they come up, you know, more and more so. So our strategy is to stay with the, you know, these very focused real world metaverses that solve a specific problem, and they'll all grow, and eventually they'll all connect. But it's going to be like that. Right now, I would say we're at the charter. If you know Dr. Rommel's work, he talked about charter cities, right? And charter cities are like a city that changes all the rules, or a part of a city that changes the rules inside the city, right? It's a place where everything changes and it all progresses, and then that city, that thing grows because it's beautiful and it impacts everything else. I would say a lot of the digital twin projects at this stage, metaverse projects, are at that kind of charter project phase where it's not the whole of the city, but it's part of it. It's not the whole of a campus, but it's part of it. And you know, I think that's a smart way to go about it. You can see the results and then test them and scale them when it all makes sense. So, yeah, no, but it's amazing, Steve, you know, how many different kind of interpretations there are out there. You know, Meta, of course, is doing things with virtual reality and kind of retail experiences. Others are really more about, you know, music and all kinds of great stuff. You know, So I think they're going to be really cool. You know, I would love to see somebody come up with one for the workplace, actually. I think that has legs. So I'm waiting for someone to come up with that. There's going to be some type of Facebook or Twitter for the workplace type thing. It's going to be kind of cool.
Well, we've leased some space for a recruiting office in the central end. So, you know, there is definitely some interesting things happening.
Yes, you can buy virtual real estate, you know, with money and that having value, you know.
Yeah.
This whole world of NFTs and, you know, the metaverse. I attended a webinar with a bunch of metaverse experts the other week, and it was fascinating. You know, a lot of questions around equity, and you know, there's a belief that it could be very freeing because, you know, thanks to NFTs and the blockchain, people would be able to own their own data, which would mean that these massive, you know, the theory being that these massive tech monoliths, if you will, would not own everybody's data, but it would be kind of a freeing of that. These are all theories about what might happen. You know, being an architect by training, you know, we have to deliver very tangible results that are exceptionally measurable. So I see got a bunch of questions, Steve. So I want to make sure we get to everybody's questions.
Yeah, well, one that I thought John might like to have a look at. I mean, we heard a lot about education during the lockdown and how,
right,
with varying degrees of success, kids were educated. But there's a question here from Jasmine Cowan, who's saying that metaverses are often seen as the golden key and poised to enter education, but currently governments and educational institutions are ill suited to vet, analyze and evaluate metaverses and their impact on society. I mean, John, do you feel that metaverses really could be this big opening, and it just needs a will and some understanding, education, if you like?
Yeah, well, those are all, you know, huge questions, and I think, you know, very good ones. I think government and regulators, you know, lag the development of the technology and the implications of the technology. You know, one of the ideas that we raise is in the article is, you know, could the metaverse, you know, not immediately, but, you know, with development of its capabilities, you know, offer, you know, equity of access to, you know, high level education globally. So could you have a, you know, metaverse based university that took, you know, people from around the world, but they wouldn't need to travel anywhere to go to that university if education is the sort of the key to accessing, you know, a higher quality of life or higher standard of living. So I think those sorts of things hold a lot of promise, but, you know, the devil's in proverbial details, in, you know, to not let the technology hype, you know, get ahead of the reality, and make sure it's part of a program with real measurable outcomes, just like building digital twins.
Okay, thanks, John. A very specific question for you, Michael, from Ian Foster, saying how many buildings will you be able to spread to if you raise the full 15 million investment raise you're on at the moment? I guess it's more broadly speaking, is what can you do with the kind of money that you're looking for at the moment? What are your plans?
Yes, a couple of things. A lot of people have been writing about this. We have over 6,500 shareholders now and raised 13 million. Somebody was asking in there. And on route to a $20 million goal now, which looks like we're going to hit pretty soon, with all the activity that's been happening. So I think the goal is to expand the company internationally with that money. It'll be going from taking a foothold in the United States, of course, which we already have, but expanding it into Europe and Asia, principally at this time. You know, we're in everyone knows that we're crowdfunding, and we have, you know, 6,500 of the most amazing investors on planet Earth who have done amazing things for us. I'm telling you, they help us all the time. Yesterday, I got an email from an investor who gave us a recruiter that we were looking for, and, you know, it was unbelievable. Just the kind of support we get is incredible. So that will help us scale. I think the key thing that we did right is we built the technology and spent all that money on the tech. And as you know, Steve, we started with an amazing team. People that came out of IBM, Lockheed, Microsoft, DARPA, that worked on this. We would love to share more publicly with people. Some young person here has written something about wanting to have a demo. Man, if this is a video game, I think his name is Nick. If this is a video game, Nick, I would definitely give it to you. But unfortunately, not even we can see what our customers do. So we do have certain videos. Go to our YouTube site, and you'll see tons of project videos there that have been approved for release from around the world. The purpose, though, is I think with the upcoming things we're doing in the cities, there is a vision to actually create a public interface for Smart World in the next year or so. And at that point, there will be access to it for the public. But at this moment, as we all know, data is, especially around buildings, extremely secure. There's a question there about security. Yeah, one of the first things that we do when we do a digital twin assessment is do a cybersecurity assessment, which we use partners for. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of amazing potential for all of that to really super scale in the coming years. Somebody was writing about how to get in touch with us because we have investors on this call. Just go to the City Zenith website, and there's an invest button up in the upper right-hand corner, and that's where you can learn more about what all of that means. I did get a private message here, and somebody asking me how the round was doing. We're doing really well, actually. I think I call this a success, the Reg A+. We're most likely going to be looking at institutional money later on this year. We're in detailed conversations with several institutions, and more about that later. But our needs are being very well met, and I honestly couldn't be happier. 2023 is going to be very interesting. So, but in terms of to make sure we get all the questions here, and there's a lot of research-related things. I want to make sure I didn't miss any of the investors either. How do we join your 6,000 plus investors? I just told you. Let's see here. What is the current valuation of City Zenith? It's a good question. We just found out. I have to tell you, just found out today. Because we just finished our shareholder cap reconciliation day. It is 40 million. It's $40 million today. So whoever asked that question, there you go. Question here maybe for you, John. What is the biggest perceived or real legal issues or challenges you have seen along the way? IP security.
IP security. Well, I think there are, I'm not a cyber security expert, but I think there are things, things that people point to are things about, identity, about, deep fakes, about the ability to maintain safe spaces, especially if you're in a corporate environment. So some of you may have heard about a woman was virtually sexually harassed, in the metaverse type of experience. And so as you increase the quality of interactions and the haptics and touch, I think that's becoming going to be a much bigger concern. And then there's also just the maintaining the integrity of the experience that you're offering. So I was on a sort of metaverse type experience with a large technology vendor, at a trade show, wandering through the Louvre in, this virtual experience. And there were trolls who somehow got into this experience and were following people around and harassing them, right? And so from a corporate perspective, being able to offer metaverse experiences that are safe for your employees, safe for your customers, is going to be a big issue. I did see a question here that I did want to address, and it relates to there's a question about policy and the metaverse. And so I wanted to share one of the immersive experiences that gets to that. So at Stanford, they have a immersive experience that puts you in the shoes of someone who is first evicted from your home, and then you end up homeless on the streets of San Francisco, and you experience what it's like to be homeless, and you see the interactions with. So after going through that experience, people are much more likely to support policies for the unhoused, probably not surprisingly. And so if you can create an experience that helps people to experience, to put themselves in somebody else's shoes, embody another perspective, and experience what that policy outcome could be, I think it could be very productive.
Right, we're doing that in Phoenix with working with Downtown Phoenix Inc., where the application is visualizing over 40 data sets in an area of Phoenix that's being used by multitudes of stakeholders. I think it's a great question, John Warren, which includes Downtown Phoenix Inc., the planning department, multiple NGOs across the city from around the city, developers who own and develop properties in downtown Phoenix are all part of this, that have created a need base for the data that they want to be able to see in order to make better decisions. And so we were able to source all of that data and integrate it into a common geospatial framework, and then make it very simple so that people could just ask a simple question and get an answer. So literally, we have done it down to the point where if you can talk and ask a question, you can get an answer. So you don't even have to be a computer user, really, barely, to be able to do this. And that's a very important application in this world because, and frankly, it's not a very even sophisticated application, digital twin technology. That's relatively basic today to be able to do that. When you really get inside what's happening inside those buildings, it gets much more complicated. But yeah, that's already happening today. So it's a reality. You're going to see more and more about that. A couple more things. A question from Brian Carter. Seen what you said on the CNBC a week ago and loved your new TV campaign. I will be investing a third time. Well, thank you very much, Brian. It warms our hearts, and it's because of you that we've gotten this far and that we're even on CNBC. So thank yourself too for helping to get us to where we are today. Without a doubt, we are one of the most serious, probably the most serious digital twin provider in the world. And the kinds of attention we're getting from VCs is off the charts. Jared LaRock, what is the current funding round close? Officially, the summer after next, but we could close it at any time. So we don't guarantee that the price won't go up. It's already gone up 167% in recent months, but we also don't know when exactly it will close. Unfortunately, when it does close, usually we make an announcement 2 months or a month in advance and say it's closing, close it. What could happen though is when an institution comes in, they will ask us to close it immediately. So, as we know from those rounds, but for the moment, it's absolutely open, Jared. So that answers your question. And again, thank you for asking it. I'm conscious of time, and I want to make sure we got everybody's questions. Steve, have we missed anybody?
Well, there was one series of questions that touched on the idea of whether you think governments, either in the US or generally, might play a part in creating metaverses. It's maybe may slow things down, some might say, but do you think there's a part that governments can play?
Well, I certainly do. I think government honestly needs to play a role. So getting back to the sort of the S in ESG, or maybe it's the G now in governance. If you look at kind of the enthusiasm that surrounded the internet and what it might be, and then what 1.0 and what it actually became. When you look, same thing, you look at the enthusiasm around social media and sort of the idealism, and then what actually became. And then you look at sort of ride sharing and the enthusiasm and hope around that and what actually became. I think it really is incumbent on government to sort of get ahead, or at least at the same point as the metaverse, so that we don't have this enormous regulatory lag in terms of how data is used, for example, because in the metaverse you could track things like heart rate or your eye data and other kinds of data that are going to be integrated into the metaverse, identity, so all those sorts of things, data use. So there's just a lot of things that government needs to get ahead of to make sure that we have the metaverse that we actually want, rather than the metaverse that we just get. That's my speech from the soapbox.
No, I agree there. I think that this is a question for Jasmine. I think, Jasmine, this is not a video game. It is a serious tool with mission critical data that solves big problems. Typically, it's used by professional users. You'll see companies out there, showing video game stuff, and we do it too. The visualization elements of this, there are multiple what we call visualization platforms that provide that layer. That is not a digital twin. That is a game environment, and underneath that there is nothing other than polygons. So what digital twin technologies do is they leverage these types of interfaces that are kind of out of the box and highly customize them, integrate them with profound space-time architectures to bring those to life. And that's why we're just not seeing really great examples yet, in my view today. And I'm of course very critical, but we will. I think that the definition of what a digital twin is maturing very, very quickly. The definition of what metaverses need to do, that's fairly explored. So far to go on that, and there's so many technologies to explore that will be a part of that. I think it's just got a long way. But generally, if you were to ask me, I think that the metaverses are very real, and they're going to be here. They're going to be. You might be a participant in different metaverses in your life. Some might have overlap. I think there's not, the same way you have different social network apps right now. You might have different metaverse apps at some point. One may be your social metaverse app. One may be your work metaverse app. One may be the one that you use to optimize all of your whatever, your energy usage and things like that. But I think those things are not inconceivable. Just need to be very clear, because there's been a lot of money spent by companies in trying to position the metaverse is like a big video game, and I've got to stop you there, because it's simply not the case. The fact that the interface is familiar to young people is good, but I can tell you that a lot of experiences don't even need the 3D universe, as it were. So Smart World today has actually used to be completely 3D immersive, and is pulled back into a 3D and a textual interface. Allows you to go back and forth between the model environment and what we call standard data readouts, which in a turns out to be a more intuitive way. But some people just give up on the universe because it's clunky, the metaverse because it's clunky right now. There's all these kinds of things need to be worked out. And but what I can say is that I think as far as cities go, man, it's one of the most exciting things, because if we get it right, we can solve so many problems. So many problems are all about collaboration and systems of systems management in cities. So if this is where it's headed, people movement is a system. Vehicular movement is a system, right? The movement of water, supply, and waste is a system. So all these systems interplay. The hope is that we can be used in the metaverse someday to really be able to optimize all of this. I actually believe it's going to happen. I think we're seeing really great examples of metaverses, and not necessarily in the US at an urban level, but you're seeing them overseas, certainly in Singapore, in Wellington, in New Zealand. There's a good one in Victoria, in Australia. So the different examples of things emerging that I think are going to, And so I guess my final comment will be there. Think about the fact that the metaverse may not be led necessarily as an American technology trend. It could be global. It could be Asia is growing exceptionally rapidly. They may have a bigger need for it than we do. So the question is, like, who's going to pick this up, really? I think that the purpose of decarbonizing is where we're seeing all of the impetus, because it involves massive collaboration at scale. So it's a natural, and other problems like that, security, all these things that involve massive collaboration and scale are natural kind of targets for metaverse solutions. What do you think, John?
I agree. I agree. I think the metaverse is going to require companies to really think about their ecosystems and who they collaborate with and how they collaborate, and secure or develop sort of new partnerships. So whether it's sustainability or consumer, that ecosystem is going to be very important.
Right.
Okay, gentlemen.
Jasmine's asking a question about data mining without user consent. That's kind of an important one. No, I think in real digital twins, there are data agreements for all data. So if you don't opt in your data, whether you're a building manager or your data is never seen. So it's a very controlled environment. Data is controlled a lot like data is in Dropbox. You have your own Dropbox folders, private folders, only you see, and everything is encrypted. So whatever you do with that data, whatever you do with your smart world, actually nobody would ever see. So, but these are very natural questions everyone asks. It was one of the common questions I get asked. When you see all this data out there, you think, actually no, it's highly secure.
Okay. I'm going to try and bring things to a close. Are there any questions you think are left out on the floor, gentlemen, that need picking up? Or are you happy to close on the comments you've made so far, or are there some final words you'd like to say?
I would only just to recap my perspective, which is, we all, and this is about the broader metaverse, not so much about building metaverses, but we all have agency here to build the metaverses or metaverse that should be. And we need to exercise that agency to make the metaverse both sustainable for planet and for people.
Okay, great. Michael, anything further to add?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming, and thank you for being a part of this wonderful opportunity to talk about such an important subject. Thank you for the lovely questions that were asked by everybody. We have some wide range of questions, and a particular thanks to my investors who came, and thank you so much for what you're doing. You just really have, I'm so grateful, for what you guys have done. You have made a company like us stand up and compete against all the big guys out there and take them on head to head. You have given me a chance to go fight against, all of the legacy nonsense crap software out there in the urban space. You've given me that opportunity to change everything, and I'm so grateful for that. It was a desk and a phone, and now we're working with the World Economic Forum as their premium digital twin partner for cities. You guys made that happen. I'm stewarding the ship without you. I'm driving an empty car. It was empty on gas, and we're going to continue to make you proud. Thank you for being a part of this, and thank you, John, for contributing your immense expertise to this subject. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, and great conversation, and great to interact with your network and investors. So thanks for having me.
Thank you too, and thank you, Steve, for being the MC of the eve, as always. And Steve, by the way, and I have been working together for a long time, and a lot of the brilliant things you've seen written about City Zenith out there were from Steve's pen. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. So shall we end it there, gentlemen?
We shall. Thanks, everyone. We went over time, but thank you for hanging in. We appreciate it. A link to the recording of this will be made available to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.